Smash Ultimate just released the third official tier list, and by Smash Ultimate, I mean Lumirank released the first official tier list for Smash Ultimate, and it's a collection of different top players who were given ballots to determine pretty much the best characters in the game. We're supposed to rate each character on a score through 1 through 10, given instructions of like what the scores generally mean, and the results were, for the most part, interesting, kind of what you might expect, with some odd cases there and there. But overall, the tier list itself is definitely something to look at. So this is the third official tier list for Smash Ultimate, and if you can compare it to the last one, you can see that there's already quite a few changes that you could eyeball right away. Big one probably being Snake now in the same tier as Steve and Sonic. Another being the return of Pikachu, the S tier. I believe Pikachu dropped off last time. So as well as Yoshi in S tier. Joker out of the top 10. Quite a few things changing around. Falco being above Wolf, etc., etc. But before we kind of deep dive into this and some of my more maybe hot takes that come with the meta and what I think about this, let's go over the article first and kind of talk about how these opinions were made, who were part of it, and some of the more interesting data points that came from this. So on Luminosity's website, they have a full article about the third official tier list, going more into a bit of the nitty gritty. So already explained earlier, it's a panel based. We had 100 responses out of any player who got ranked in the top 150 the past whatever amount of time, past year. They're told to rate characters 1 to 5, and then they were also supposed to give the top 5 for the whole list, who their top 5 were, and that were those characters were weighted a little more compared to the rest. Another thing that isn't pointed out immediately is that the highest 3 and lowest 3 are dropped. So any volatile responses, like someone putting Steve at 1 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10, or others you'll see as we get down the article, were removed because they're extreme data points that obviously don't align with a general consensus of what the rest of the data is. So let's get into this analysis, because there's some really interesting things that players put here. The first being that while Steve was the consensus number 1 character, with pretty much 2/3 of the panelists putting him at number 1, one region put a different character first above Steve, and this time instead of Europe, it was Japan. You would think it would be Sonic, but it actually isn't. It was Kazuya that Japan thinks is number 1 in the game, where 13 people ranked Kazuya above Steve and Sonic, which is crazy. My cam's blurry. Thank you. And of course, the second most common in top 5 ranking was Sonic at number 2, but he only got 40% of the players who put him there. And there wasn't really any other character in the top 5 who got even close to a quarter or more than 25% of people saying their top 5. So the top 5 debate was very all over the place. Probably due to Japan, if I'm being honest, compared to any other character group of players. Japan had some interesting opinions. I'll say that, looking at the actual data when we're putting together this list. So Ganondorf was the clear worst character in the game, but not by complete consensus. And while Little Mac was the second lowest, in Japan, Simon and Richter actually ranked as the worst character in the game below Ganondorf, which is crazy to me. But also Simon/Richter haven't seen any meta game presence just as similar to Ganon at all in the past year. Like, just very few data points or any players really bringing the character forward. So I'm not really surprised that this is a potential outtake, especially considering Japan has some pretty good Ganondorfs like Komagura and Shin the Lion, if I'm saying that correctly, if I'm remembering the tag correctly. So this isn't too surprising. There is Trigger, who was a good Simon player in Japan. So I'm kind of surprised that like that was the character that ended up down there, but I guess it is what it is. I can't really think of like thinking of the bomb tiers, and there's not really many that don't have a rep in Japan. Maybe King K. Rule, but I guess they just don't view King K. Rule as the worst. Like I should. Oh no, Ball. Ball just made top 8 at France major, so maybe not. Yeah, I guess they have a lot of actual representation in the bottom tiers enough that you know makes Simon or Victor feel like the worst character in their metagame. Last relevant Belmont result was probably Trigger getting top 64 Umabir at the start of 2024. Yeah, that's probably accurate. I'd believe you. I'd believe you. And then when it comes to the 5 characters with the lowest standard deviation, so pretty much the 5 characters who had the most agreed upon scores, uh, Sonic, Snake, Mario, Roy, and Pyra and Mythra were all pretty much the closest to each other. And even though like they're close, point 0.4 like standard deviation is exactly small. So there's still quite a bit of divisiveness between where these characters ranked, but those were the characters that were most standard agreed upon. And the characters with the highest standard deviations were King Dedede, Pichu, Little Mac, Marth, and Ganondorf. So the 5 characters who had like the scores most all over the place. King Dedede, I feel like makes a lot of sense because Japan has quite a few King Dededes. That character is probably going to be viewed upon more highly over there. They have quite a few who've made waves, making like top 16 at majors. It's not just Zaki, there's others as well. Pichu is definitely a character who's just volatile to begin with, so that's not too surprising as well. Little Mac is either seen as bottom of the barrel or like a pretty decent low tier, so once again, not surprising. Marth is a character no one under fucking stands, so I completely get that as well. I'm very interested though that Ganondorf somehow ended up on this list. Ganondorf, like, I feel like should have probably had enough of a consensus towards the bottom, which makes me concerned about how high up the people in Japan who didn't rank him as the worst put him in terms of a score. Because I feel like he was pretty consensus as like a 1 or maybe a 2 on the English tier list form. I'd have to look back on that because I'd be really curious. But that's a very wild character to have as a very high divisive point, considering a lot of people consider him the worst in the game. Samus, Dark Samus were the highest ranked character to have no panels put them in the top 5. Not really too surprising. I feel like Samus hasn't had as strong as a presence this year. Probably also due to Yara not being as active, but at the same time, like it feels like it really just is kind of Siski right now pushing that character. Feel like we haven't really seen Icymus that much. Quick is just starting to enter events again. So not too surprising of a character to really end up there. And then, of course, some of you probably heard of this one. King Dedede was the lowest ranked character to have a panelist place him in the top 5. Hence why we removed the highest 3 and the lowest 3, because what? And Pichu was the lowest ranked character to have multiple panelists put them in the top 5, which I don't know how that opinion is generated. I don't even know who. Like I can't even. I'd have to go back and look, but that's wild to me that multiple people put Pichu in the top 5. It's not just like one person being haha funny or having a wild ass opinion. They forgot Pichu got nerfed. Yeah, seriously. Back in 2019. Nah, Pichu's I feel like way too inconsistent for what the character wants to do to be anywhere close to top 5. But I think where they are on the current tier list is actually a pretty good spot for them. The winners this time around, the characters who rose the most, the characters who a lot of people's opinions rose with over time, were Luigi, Olimar, Hero, Donkey Kong, and Kirby, who all rose at least 10 spots from the last tier list. And the characters who kind of saw the most fall off were Marth, Sheik, Pac-Man, Pokemon Trainer, Sephiroth, Lucina, and Jigglypuff. That's quite a few, a lot more characters who saw more bigger fall offs. I'm curious. I don't remember where Martha was tiered last, so considering that he fell 10 spots is kind of crazy. Sheik, I'm not surprised by because I feel like Sheik kind of stopped existing. We haven't really seen Web JP that up much. AIM doesn't compete at all anymore. Character just doesn't really show up ever, I feel like, at top results. Pac-Man, very similarly, tees more primary Kazuya these days. JDV is probably the only true Pac-Man rep left. I did forget Rox in Mexico. That is true. But that's also like Rox doesn't leave Mexico, or very rarely does. He only left Mexico once for Agamo and did pretty well. They got top 32, but otherwise, uh, she's just not mainstream in the meta. Marth was 55th last time. Okay, gotcha. Damn. So crazy that he fell. But yeah, Pac-Man, I feel like just there isn't really a lot of Pac-Mans doing it big right now. Pokemon Trainer just has vanished. DD doesn't really compete ever, so we don't see Pokemon Trainer there. Quid decided to spawn in Japan for 1 week and then did pretty well, got ninth, but other than that, this character just doesn't exist. I feel like the only frequent Pokemon Trainer player out there is Noi, and even then, Noi's results are one, still mixed with Olimar, but two, pretty inconsistent. Sephiroth, not really surprised. Similarly, just not really utilized. I feel like the only player who really utilizes Sephiroth in this meta is Beast Mode Paul for Heroes bad matchups. But otherwise, like Tweak very rarely uses him. I guess Reno's the only other. Actually, Reno too. Reno does use Sephiroth quite a bit as well with Byleth. So like there's a few players. There's a few players who still utilize him, but I think the hype on him has either died down or like the expectations of what he can do. He's just like an okay mid tier. And I think a lot of people sit around that idea of him and makes sense in this meta. Lucina also makes sense. Even though Mystery's definitely been putting up some good showings with the character, that's really it. Proto doesn't compete with Lucina, and even if he came back, I think he said he would not play Lucina. So makes sense. And then lastly is Jigglypuff, and that's probably because both Base Mage and Senra were just not very active for a good portion of last year. But hey, Base Mage came back and did really well at Genesis, so maybe the character's perception will finally go up. Umeki credited the Proto Steve for helping him beat Onin/Pocket. Really? That's the bad timeline. If Proto comes back and is a Steve Minmin player, that's the bad timeline. I stay as a content creator then. I don't want you coming back. If I can't get the beauty that was Proto's Lucina ever again, I think it's good it maybe just stays as content. Finally, no characters drop spots despite their score increasing, but Duck Hunt, Inkling, Lucas, Mega Man, Ness, Piranha Plant, Ridley, Rob, and Yoshi all rose despite their score decreasing. A big interesting thing that I kind of saw in this tier list is that opinions of character power levels definitely shifted more negatively for a lot of characters. So when those K cluster divides happened, it really ended up like I'll get a little more into when we actually look at the full tier list, but the characters from like S were way above A. Like there's actually a bit of a more negative look on a decent portion of the cast in terms of last year, and like that characters are overall worse compared to the best in the game. And then there are some fun regional differences. So pretty obvious what's going to be here. But the US and Canada were high on Mega Man, Marth, and Pac-Man, while low on Falco, Lucario, Olimar, Shulk, Banjo, and Isabelle. Latin America was high on Marth, Sheik, Terry, Lucina, Robin, Bowser Jr., Pikachu, and Wario, Wii Fit Trainer, while low on Donkey Kong, Captain Falcon, Diddy Kong, Greninja, Shulk, and Banjo. I will say Latin America is probably the smallest group, so obviously the list is going to be much more diverse. Europe was high on Mewtwo and Marth, but low on Olimar, which is hilarious considering there's a meme about them not being able to beat Olimar. Kazuya and Captain Falcon, but Japan was high on Captain Falcon, Isabelle, and Falco, but low on Pikachu and Wii Fit Trainer. So like some pretty obvious opinions here haven't changed. Japan has always been low in Pikachu. US and Canada has always been high in Mega Man, Pac-Man. Europe, I don't know what the hell they're doing this time around. I'm kind of surprised they're also low in Kazuya, but I guess there really isn't a big Kazuya in EU. Not that I can think of. Like Tarek doesn't really use Kazuya anymore. So I'm trying to think who's the next best behind him. I guess Mozai. Yeah, probably Mozai. It's probably Mozai. Andres does also use Kazuya, but I don't think nearly as much as like Terry Ryu can. So yeah, it's probably Mozai. The character's just not really that prevalent over there. Now that I'm really like actually thinking about it. So yeah, all of those make sense. I like, except for Latin America because they're too small of a group for me to really pin anything on. But and of course, US and Canada are low on all of the Japan high characters like Lucario and Falco and Olimar, Banjo, Isabelle, especially Isabelle. Then of course there's all the panelists. As you can see, there's a lot of Japanese ones, quite a few NA as well. So pretty diverse group, but definitely some Japanese influence this time around. So let's actually get into like the tier list and kind of talk about each tier and my opinions about that, because there's some that I'm either baffled by or just, don't really get or don't agree with at all. We'll start at the very bottom. So new tier, we have Lil Mac and Ganondorf, and to be honest, I don't understand Little Mac's perception to be the same tier as Ganondorf. I mean, there is a decent enough gap that you can consider them in separate tiers, but like, I don't think personally that Little Mac is that much worse than the characters in the tiers above him, especially with the success that he's found, not just like now, but throughout Ultimate's lifespan. Like between Peanut having some solid results back in 2023/2024, and now we have like Lee Mac and KO Cow who've been doing decently well in Japan, with Lee Mac making the top 150. I don't know. I don't really see Little Mac in the same sphere as Ganondorf in terms of like the definitive, this character is unviable. I think Lil Mac has a lot more to explore. Obviously, I don't think he's like a mid tier. He's a solid low tier, in my opinion, but I don't think he should be the second worst in the game, because I think there's characters who are less prevalent and have like just overall worse things going for them, or just not really anything left to really explore. Ganondorf is definitely the worst. IMO. Mac is even bomb 3. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think Mac's bomb 3. I think he should be in the tier above. He's definitely not that much many numbers higher. He definitely still has the shortcomings, obviously, but I don't think he deserves to be that low, in my opinion. Otherwise, yeah, Ganon is the worst in the game. I don't think there's any argument. I guess Japan has a different argument, but I don't see it yet. I think the Belmonts still have some things going for them. While to me, Ganondorf is just, I don't think Ganon could possibly ever not be the bomb in this game. What's your bomb 3? Definitely Ganondorf. I'm not a King Deity believer. I don't think King Deity is good. I don't think he's the second worst in the game. I think he's probably the third worst. But I don't think DDD is like, I'm not a believer at all. I don't think the character is good at all. He just gets juggled. I feel like he just doesn't have kill power for how heavy he is. Very slow moves. And just no mobility whatsoever. The one dude put DD top 5 was enough to edge him over Doc K. Rule Bell. Well, no, because that would have been removed. So there's enough positive opinion, most likely in Japan, about DD. Just because like DD has multiple reps like Zaki and Ari and Muhoyo Joe. I don't know how to pronounce these tags, so don't flame me for that. I'm just off the top of my head of the ones that come to mind. Uh, they have multiple DDs who've put up decent enough results that I'm not surprised. I just don't believe in the character. I'd probably personally also put Doc in bottom three. No, no, DD's bottom two. I'd put Doc at the third worst. I at least think Doc has like some ability to do things. But man, if you just hit him off stage, he's dead. There was one set recently. I think it was T versus Beastly at Genesis, where for some reason Beastly took out Dr. Mario for game 3 after going down 0-2 with Diddy. And just, I don't even think the game lasted a minute. It was so bad. You just get him off stage and he dies. So, speaking of Doc, let's go into D tier. D tier is kind of our low tiers here. And yeah, for the most part, the characters who are here make sense to me. We have Me Sword Fighter, Zelda, Ike, Piranha Plant, Villager, King Deity, King K. Rool, Simon, and Dr. Mario. I am shocked Villager is this low. I'm not surprised, and it's like that he's in this tier. I do think he's not worse than Plant or Ike or Me Sword Fighter. He might be worse than Zelda. I think Zelda's a little underrated most of the time. I think that character actually has things that they can do some pretty good zoning, some insanely good kill confirms too. And not comprehend the Villager Isabel gap. That's a Japan thing. I don't really understand what makes Isabel so much better either. I think I guess she kind of has a better recovery in terms of having a tether, and she has some faster neutral attacks. Like some of her tilt, like she has a very fast down smash or tilts actually, or up tilt combos, which is pretty big, I think too. Still has the zoning authority and back here, but like Villager has some good anti-zoning capabilities, and that's why I'm confused why people see him that much worse. Like, I don't think his skill set is bad, but I just don't. I guess at the same time, though, like outside of Kept, who also plays Isabel and Diddy Kong, the character just doesn't exist. So I also kind of get why he's there, but I feel like Villager isn't this bad. But I guess like I wouldn't say he's outside of D tier either, because I just don't view him highly either. But he's better than some of the characters above him, at least in my opinion. Everyone else here, though, I feel like belongs in this tier. Everyone else here, I think, maybe not Zelda, but I wouldn't consider Zelda a mid tier. So yeah, no, I'd say everyone belongs in this tier. I do think maybe some characters in the tier above should probably be down here. I don't think all the characters above are mid tier, but we'll get into that in a second. But I do think if you say these are low tiers, I wouldn't argue with you. I'm kind of surprised Me Sword Fighter got such a big bump. Maybe that's Japan. I don't remember. Sword Fighter's okay. Like similarly, like has some things going for him. Probably deserves to be above some of the characters that he is, but shocked that he's at the very top of D tier, I guess. So let's get into the mid tiers, or I should say the lower mid tiers. This is kind of where it gets a bit confusing, because C tier is like, in terms of how the average score is laid out, this is kind of still like that mid tier area. So I'm going to call them the low mid tiers because like it's kind of what they are. The average Spencer, how's it going? And this tier is interesting. So C minus to me is a tier where I think it's where the tier list to me gets a little weird. You have Link, Ridley, Bowser, Duck Hunt, Kirby, Isabelle, Robin, Bowser Jr., Mewtwo, Jigglypuff, and Marth. And like, this is such an interesting mix of characters in terms of where I don't know. Like when I look at this tier, just some things don't connect in my brain for where characters should be. Uh, like the first one that screams out to me is like I think Mewtwo should be down a tier. I don't think Mewtwo deserves to be in C minus tier. I don't think Mewtwo's that good. I don't think Mewtwo works as a character that well in this game. Um, I wouldn't put him in the same tier as most of the other characters here because I don't think he has either the potential or the results to be here, if that makes sense. I'd probably also move Isabel down with Villager. I also a similar character where like sure there's players who are doing well with her, but that doesn't to me justify her being where she is. Kirill hella underrated. Yeah, he's. I don't think he is worse than DDD. If you flipped him in DDD, that's probably my bottom five. I don't think K. Rool should be down there. I don't know where he'd be. I still think he should be in D tier. K. Rool is like still a very gimmicky character in that sense. Doesn't mean he's necessarily can't do things, but like it's like fighting an actual boss in a video game. His moveset, where if you find out the patterns, like his patterns are, I feel like a little more obvious in terms of what they can do. That being said, I do think K. Rool has some interesting exploration with his armor that still can be done. I think the character has some sort of potential, but I feel like he'd always be stuck in the low tier just due to being a heavy that has to rely on like Crown to do things. And in terms of like some other characters here that I feel get underrated, Jigglypuff's just down here because I feel like people forgot what Jigglypuff's capable of because Base Mage and Senra have stopped competing. And then Junior is weird. I feel like Junior has a high opinion, but no one seems to rate him highly. Like a character who probably should be rated above some of these, well, probably most of the characters in this tier, but has a lot of capabilities. And I think if I had to pick a character who's going to rise, be one of the highest rises next year if we have another tier list, if Smash 6 doesn't come out, most likely we'll have another tier list. Actually, Smash 6 isn't coming for a while, but say we have another tier list, I do think Junior does jump up probably the highest compared to any other character. We're finally seeing the character really pop off. Like I feel like we've seen a lot of. I think at LMBM we saw quite a few Junior upsets, and then Wadara had a crazy run, which we'll get into at Genesis. Wydara, I don't know how to pronounce the tag. So I think the character will see once again a higher opinion as time goes on. Yeah, and Zap. I almost forgot about Zap. Yeah, Zap 2 breaking into the top 100. First, second, did Yoda Cage be in top 100 on Ryan rank? He might have. But really breaking into unofficial ranking the top 100. Most of the other characters here probably should be here, if I had to say. Link is interesting because he's always been kind of like the Mr. Potential with his item play, but he still has very slow normals. And without Tether, his recovery gets kind of vulnerable. He has to sometimes rely on using Bomb to recover, which hasn't always worked out for him. So he definitely is the worst Link in my opinion. And like even if he has those crazy task combos, there's just Ultimate's not going to be around long enough for someone to capitalize on that. I'd bring Robin and Duck up to D tier. I feel like those characters, to me, in my opinion, are where they belong in terms of. I mean, I see them as low tiers though, which is why C tier is so weird to me because like I don't view these characters as mid tiers. I think all of these characters like that are ranked here, I would say are low tier characters in my opinion. So that's where it gets weird. I don't know. It's definitely the weirdest tier. Like then there's also Kirby who's been popping off, but Kirby also like sure it has good combos, but if you are good at air camping Kirby, there's not much Kirby can do. Doesn't have great air mobility. You don't see Link, Mewtwo, and Bowser as low tiers? I do. I think those characters are ass. I think they're garbage, to be honest. uh, this tier's just weird to me. I don't know. Like, it's such a mishmash of characters. I don't even know how to comprehend them next to each other. But to me, they're all kind of meh. And then there's C plus, the tier above, and that is Lucario, Banjo, Wii Fit, Chrom, Lucas, Mii Gunner, and Incineroar. And I feel like this is the tier of I don't really know how to rank these characters that well. Actually, that's probably the tier below. This is like that, but they're better than the ones below. I don't really think there's any character here that screams wrong to me. Like, this tier feels pretty comprehensive of all the characters that belong here. Not better than like meta relevant characters, but could probably still do things given the tools they have. And I think all of them, not all of them, that is a complete lie, but a decent amount of them have shown that they could top 8 in major as well. Pretty, not consistently, but like frequent enough that it's not just a fluke when it happens. And they have players who pilot them really well, like Achipi with Lucario and Torigiri with Banjo. My God, though, every time I watch like Torigiri play Banjo, I'm impressed by his ability to pilot the character, but I just think the character is so bad. Like, I see him winning, and like when he does like neutral B 3 times into a forward air or an up air, I'm like, wow, this character did 5 moves to get 20% damage. Wow, how fucking awful. How awful Banjo is. So the fact that Torigiri does so well with the character is so impressive to me. To me, that character just feels clunky. I don't know. Something just doesn't feel right about Banjo in this game. Wii Fit Trainer, I feel like, has always been a character of I can do things. I feel like Wii Fit's waiting on a player to really pilot the character to her potential. Like, I feel like she should do better than she does. I think Deep Breathing's a fucked up move. Her camping ability is also really messed up. Her ability to just plank ledge. But yeah, she is inconsistent, and that is true. And that's where it's kind of like I don't know how to feel about this character. I feel like someone can bring her above where she currently is. She's just a little too weird with her hitboxes and everything else around her. I feel like she has a good potential though. But at this point though, if this late in the game's lifespan, if I'm saying you have potential, it's probably not going to be recognized. I think Bowser Jr. is quite literally the only character that feels like it's thoroughly getting explored and is showcasing that they can actually do pretty well in the meta. Every other character here, though, I feel like at this point, if you're in the C tier, I don't really see you rising out of it. Like earlier, I said people like Jigglypuff feels low because people forgot about her, but I don't think she'll ever be above C plus. Like, she still has flaws with her really slow fall speed that just makes her hang in the air for so long and shorter normals. Chrom underrated should def be in PI mode. I do not agree. I think Chrom is exactly where he belongs. Chrom is the epitome of inconsistency, and he's like, to me, Dr. Mario, but has mobility. But if you send him off stage, he just dies. Like, to the point where his ability to take you down to the stage with his up B doesn't even feel threatening anymore. And like, you value good neutral more than most people. The thing is, I feel like the meta is moving away from being able to play good neutral. And that's why Chrom is, to me, Chrom to me is just never going to be able to explore that because his lack of recovery means that it doesn't matter how good his neutral is. If you just explode off hit, if you die because you got one combo off 60 and ended up off stage and now you have to recover in a game where every character can ledge trap you, it's just, at that point, what are you even doing? Like, so yeah, I think outside of Bowser Jr., any of the characters that are C and below probably are just going to stay here throughout the rest of the game's lifespan. I don't see any of them moving up. These, I think, are going to be that lower end of the tier characters no matter what happens from now on. I don't believe in Lucas' potential. At this point, if there hasn't been a Lucas who just uses that double jump cancels air nonsense to its fullest ability and I don't know. I just don't see it happening at this point. I think the character is where he belongs as well. So let's get into these mid tiers. Let's get into these B tier characters, the true mid tiers of this game. Starting off with B minus, we have Neth, Sheik, Meta Knight, Mega Man, Inkling, Sephiroth, Byleth, Ice Climbers, Pichu, and Donkey Kong. The first thing that automatically jumps out to me more than anything is what the fuck is Mega Man doing down here? Mega Man to me, I feel like Japan thinks is so bad that I don't like I don't know how Mega Man's this far down. It's so weird to me. Yeah, Mega Man's good. Mega Man's a good character. I think at least should be an A minus. I don't see how his reputation has fallen so low. I just don't get it. I think it's just because like there isn't any active Mega Mans anymore in Japan that do well. Like Kamei doesn't play Mega Man anymore. Repo doesn't play the game anymore. I guess we haven't seen Repo in a long time. Uh, I feel like the best one right now is like maybe Tomi Tomi. The character just does not exist. But in the US we have Peep Nut, who obviously showcase that the character can do well over and over again. And I feel like when you watch the character play, it's just yeah, the character has really good utility. I don't understand why Japan just views the character so low. I don't. I think Mega Man's a high tier character. I don't really get why he's here. Sheik, you don't understand why Sheik's in B tier. I think Sheik kind of belongs here. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe not B minus. Maybe B minus. Honestly, Sheik is a weird case of this character could do so much, but it's a similar vein of the games is losing more and more of the idea of playing neutral and more about the advantage state and the damage of combos and killing characters and taking stocks quickly. And Sheik has some things like needing Nair, which is a move that trades a lot and kind of low damage despite high volume of combos. Sure, she has things that can kill, like falling up, drag down up air into like a smash attack and raindrop is really good. But she also kind of sits in that inconsistency idea where in actual tournament play, her fuck ups are a lot worse for her than other characters. Because, like, if you fuck up, say, against Donkey Kong and then get grabbed, like, you're probably eating quite a bit of damage right away. Tweak thinks she's top 10, but the bus thinks she's in top 50. Yeah, character's very, it's a very hard character to pin down because in a hypothetical bubble, it does feel like she can do a lot, but in practice, the character I feel like struggles with a decent amount of matchups against the higher tiers or characters where like she just shut down neutral. Like, what are you supposed to do with when you're a character who just wants to play neutral? It feels like she can't really overwhelm opponents with needles and her mobility when her combos might only do like 30 damage for like 6, 7, 8, 9 moves. And then you could just have Falco up tilt you, and now you're in a cutscene for a bit. Are we going to get Smash 4 DK versus Sheik moments? Probably. There's probably already out there. Maybe not with Donkey Kong, but other characters that just explode. I don't know. Sheik's definitely a very hard character to pin. I feel like she's just always going to be viewed in this area because the range of opinion on her is very wide. But I think similarly to like, we don't really have a Sheik that's visible enough to the wider player base and top players. Like outside of Rocks, I don't think there's really another Sheik that's doing it like that. And Rocks is kind of just locked in Mexico. So we don't really know the full potential of him as a player outside of the 1-2 times a year we see him at a potential Mexican major. So I think that character's just going to be stuck there forever. I'm surprised Byleth didn't drop harder because outside of Reno, this character doesn't exist. Like Leo doesn't really use him that often anymore. And as a fellow Byleth main, I don't think Byleth is better than Icy's Pichu. No, I don't think he's better than Donkey Kong either. But I'm kind of surprised he's there. He does feel like a true mid tier though. Like he still can do things. He can still cheese really well, but his low mobility I feel like just doesn't work for him. Leo trauma, yeah, probably. Sephiroth is also in a similar vein, but at the same time, like, I get it. I do think Sephiroth is still fine. He's just not as overtuned as others. He still has some solid matchups against some of the characters above him. Can still do things could still do some things pretty well in this meta. It's just that sometimes that skinny hitboxes and really lightweight where wing just doesn't really matter as much because you die too early. Or a character not really coming truly online until wing like forms just makes him uh very volatile. Not volatile, but just very tough to play because you could just explode when you have the resources you need to really activate as a character. I think this is a good tier for Pichu. I think Pichu got a little pushed down as like, oh, Pichu's a really bad character without the stuff that she had in 2019, or what, yeah, the characters had in 2019. But now I think Pichu players have really evolved the character. I've really showcased that Pichu could still do well. Nader, you and Dryby have done pretty cool things with the character. Uh, Yone P as well, making top 8 at majors. So like, yeah, a good mid tier character is what Pichu is. Obviously, Pichu still has the issues of being extremely light and not always killing super early. But I think we're finally seeing Pichu settle where they meant to be. Donkey Kong's funny, right? Because if you ask like maybe top North American players, Donkey Kong is just like this meme character who's just funny to play, but he's not really good. And then you have like Ralix and Mildna HO who just beat Apollo Kage, and Chunky Kong and uh, even Kuhaku and Phantom and like these other Donkey Kongs just showing up and making big upsets and kind of showcasing the character can do things. Has kill confirms with grab and really nice range on their hits. Has really good mobility. Just really shit disadvantage, which is why he won't be any higher than B tier, but can surprisingly function with the cheese that he has. Yeah, Chike has all the cheese to make him out. Exactly. It can surprisingly function really well because of that. If I skip neutral and just out damage you and beat the crap out of you, what are you gonna do? So a really surprising character to make it far in the meta. But I also remember, like, if you remember back in 2018 during those pre-release tournaments where people were like, oh, Donkey Kong's really good. Like, I feel like you saw a lot of early tier lists saying Donkey Kong was a pretty good character. It's funny to see that come full circle here. I feel like Charge Punch is also a super good move, or Giant Punch, or whatever it's called. Just being able to armor through things for an insane kill powers really showcased how, I don't know, like how strong that is to have. I feel like most of the characters here elsewise make sense. ICs is a solid mid tier. Meta Knight has definitely showcased to be decent with like what Leo's been doing with the character, and Matara's also put in some good results. Ness, this is probably where he belongs nowadays. Unfortunately, the character has some issues, but still solid enough. And then there's B plus, a surprisingly small tier, with Young Link, picked Captain Falcon, Ken, Rosalina. All of these characters make sense to me here, if I'm being honest. I think these are all pretty solid mid-tier characters. Pit to me is like, he has good things, but just I feel like misses bullshit. Captain Falcon is like the true mid-tier to me in this game. Has really good things, but also just can get exploded as well. Ken has his inconsistencies, which is why he's down here in comparison to, say, Ryu, who's above him in the tier above. And Young Link. So I am a Young Link player, or was, I should say. I've kind of stopped playing Ultimate for a bit, and now I'm coming back and trying Young Link again. Just the character feels bad to play sometimes, man. That lack of ability to get off the ledge really hurts sometimes, and as more stubbier normals can really feel rough. The character obviously still can do things, but I do think Young Link isn't a high tier character. I used to think that, but the more I play him, especially nowadays, I just don't believe in the character. It feels like you have to really rely on your projectiles for kill confirms too, which just doesn't it gets a little too obvious in play. He has a lot of interesting sauce that he can do, but that type of stuff is so niche where he doesn't have enough. He has a lot of like micro level things that could really work, but his macro level sometimes just doesn't, if that makes sense. I feel like his overall game plan just sometimes is too either linear or just doesn't get the job done in comparison to other characters because of maybe his stubbiness or like his overall kill power. Especially if you get out of that kill confirm range, it just becomes so much harder. So yeah, I think mid tier is where he belongs. I do not think Young Link is the best Link. I do agree with the tier list on that. We'll get that in a bit. And I think lastly, Rosalina. Rosalina is interesting because Rosalina actually has like quite a few reps doing good work outside of the buzz. Like there's Yamadi and Yuzu and Solo and Mpapo. Like the character actually has good representation and some decent matchups against some of the higher up characters, but it's similar to like Rosalina is not the cheese factory she was in Smash 4, where you're just not gonna go up and up air people to death. She kind of lacks that a bit. She has some really cool confirms with Luma into Rosa, like actually feeling like a puppet character, but I feel like she has to put in way more effort to get where she needs to be. And I feel like mid tier is exactly where it belongs. I feel like B plus to me all makes sense. All of these characters to me just this is where they belong, which leads me into the upper echelon of our tier list, our high tiers. Lucina. Sorry, I should start with A minus and go through before I start talking about characters. Ryu, Shulk, Mii Brawler, Terry, Zero Suit Samus, Greninja, Pac-Man, Pokemon Trainer, Toon Link, and Lucina all make up A minus. The very end of the high tiers. This is a really interesting tier, isn't it? Some characters here, I think, fully belong here. Ryu makes sense. Ashima's really showcased what this character can do, especially with his zoning potential with his fireballs and converting into that, and how consistent he is with that type of stuff. Mii Brawler to me is a character who still has potential to go up, but I think where he is right now makes sense. We're still waiting to really see players really hone in on what Mii Brawler can do. We're starting to see the rise of those players, but it's going to take some time for Mii Brawler, I feel like, to really hit the public eye of where the potential of where he might end up. I think he still has places to rise. Terry's still kind of where he belongs. I feel like we haven't really seen much from him in terms of outside of riddles this year, but it's essentially like he hasn't really changed. I feel like he's a character where he exists exactly where I kind of expected to exist. Okay, music, that was weird. Zero Suit Samus still has decent enough traits where like, yeah, it makes sense that she's still a high tier. Mars still does really good stuff with her. Greninja's always seen good representation despite some inconsistencies. Shulk, I kind of skipped over him. Shulk's weird, right? Because outside of Kome, there's no Shulk hitting that level of success. I think Carmelo's like the only person who's like pulled out Shulk and done things. I guess Nico as well, but Nico doesn't compete. I feel like if Nico truly competed in Ultimate, maybe I'd have a higher perception of Shulk, but this character feels so inconsistent in terms of, I feel like I'm using that word a lot, but that is a big thing. Like his play with shield art just doesn't translate to what you expect the character to do. Oh, and Akio. I'm sorry, I did forget about Akio. So maybe the thing is, Akio just doesn't compete as much because he's in a sector of Japan where he has to travel to the main scene. Oh no, I don't know. This is one of those characters where high tier sure makes sense. Kanachi, I feel like he's also Snake though too. So like it's one of those like not true Shulks, but he does do well with Shulk enough, I'd say. But yeah, this is one of those characters where sure, this makes sense, I guess. I don't know. I don't think he's projected to go up, to be honest. I feel like we've seen what Shulk can do at this point. I feel like he might go down more over time, but otherwise, I think this is probably where Shulk belongs, if I had to say so. But the last three of this tier are the most interesting, and that's Pokemon Trainer, Toon Link, and Lucina. Let's start with Pokemon Trainer. This character just doesn't exist anymore. I like, sure, Outlier came back, but he hasn't really been putting up those kind of results, and he doesn't compete that often. Noi mainly uses, or like at least a good portion of results also come from Olimar. And then Quid just doesn't play the game. So it comes to the question of like, sure, his characters are missing, but does he really deserve to still be considered in this position where he is? Are we just holding on to the idea that Pokemon Trainer is a high tier character? And I'm not sure anymore that he is. As strange as that is to say, their disadvantage stays so bad in this meta. Yeah, like that's the thing. It feels like his disadvantage isn't great. It feels like Squirtle doesn't hold the advantage state that the better characters above him does. It feels like Ivysaur wants to play neutral in a game that is progressing away from neutral, and Charizard has always been Charizard. Like, sure, he's just used to find the kill occasionally, but otherwise, you don't want to play Charizard most of the time. So yeah, these characters, I feel like, are just so outpaced nowadays, where I don't think PT really is able to shine in this meta, and I don't think any of the Mons are good enough individually to carry him. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, say, finally next tier list, the idea of PT drops more and he ends up in the B tier. I could see that happening. I'd love to see that change my mind. I think Pokemon Trainer is a really cool character in this game, but I unfortunately just don't think, like, I don't see that happening. I don't see how that happens. Like, even when watching Quid come back at Sumabato and doing well, you feel like you saw the shortcomings of what the character had to deal with. I felt like all the characters, all the Mons got edge guarded and like couldn't get off ledge, and he struggled to sometimes find the kill. I don't know. I feel like it's a character who could still has room to go down, which is sad to say because I think PT's a really cool character. I'm realizing I also skipped over Pac-Man, but I want to get back to him last because he's the weirdest one in this tier, in my opinion. Toon Link, can I be honest? Can I be real? I think he belongs here. I know that's a hot take. Toon Link, though, like, this character has a lot of going for him, which is insane to say. This character, damn, Pac-Man fell off. Yeah, we'll get to him in a second. It's based in real. Yes. Toon Link to me has really good normal attacks, which is insane. Like, his up tilt can kill confirm into up air at such a wide percentage. His back air is a great combo move. His neutral air is a good get off me attack, as well as decent at comboing. His forward tilt is a ledge trapping war crime. I think his dash attack also can confirm into some combos, if I'm not mistaken. Like, overall, just he actually has quite a good amount of tools. And then can still has link zoning, still has boomerang and bomb, which is always good utilities to have. And has a Zaire to help mix up his ooh, I have hiccups, I guess. Excuse me. And has a Zaire to help mix up his recovery. So on top of that, his floatiness makes him a bit harder to combo compared to like young Link. I don't know, just overall, he's quite good. He actually can do things, and that's impressive. Like, to me, like, it's impressive that this late in the game, Toon Link has really built up himself. It's not just level 1 who's like showcased it. Like, obviously, he's not the only Toon Link out there. We used to have Sigma, who also put up really good results. There were a ton of Japanese Toon Links. I don't know what happened to most of them competing. Like, Manzuku doesn't really feel like compete either anymore. The character always felt like was a sleeper hit, and now that he's finally being recognized as so, I think is correct. I don't think he's going to go any higher. Like, I feel like the end of high tiers where he belongs. But he's good, in my opinion. I think this is a correct spot for him. Spritzy too. Yeah, Spritzy also I think upset the buzz. Like there's players out there doing good things with them. There's lastly Lucina, and Lucina to me is so odd because like I feel like if Proto still competed and was still like the Lucina Min player that he was, I feel like Lucina would have a higher regard. Uh, I think we kind of have to wait for Mr. E to kind of get to that point of like top 8ing majors, at least with the character. But even Mr. E has kind of lost faith in the character a bit. And it's mainly due to her simplicity, but I feel like she's still good. Like she never felt like her stats were bad enough that she is gonna ever fall off that hard. Like it feels like she's still all rounded enough that she can do things well enough that she can exist in this metagame, even though she likes to play neutral, but she also like still really good at edge guarding, has very good damage, has very good kill power. So I'll never see Lucina dropping off, but she'll always be kind of like at that end of high tier. Maybe she'll end up in mid tier, but I feel like the opinion of her is never going to shift downward because of both what Proto has done with the character and just her overall stats never feeling lacking enough to do it. Like she feels too consistent of a character. Like you know what she wants to do and she can execute her game plan. It's just tough. Because a lot of other characters want to do bullshit things. I realized I skipped over Pac-Man. Pac-Man is an oddball in this case. I do think he's too low. I think a lot of people forgot about him. I think a lot of Pac-Mans just either aren't competing as much or just aren't the character's just not getting as many results as he used to. But his stats still feel similarly good. It's just that like he can't execute his bag of tricks on the lot of the new characters above him. And the rise of characters like Cloud and Corrin and other swords who like can break his stuff real easily. And then on top of that, just characters who don't want to play neutral against him, like Snake and Steve, definitely make it hard. I think A- is fine. I do too. I don't think he's higher than A-, but I don't think he's at the very end of it. I do think he's better than like Greninja and Zero Suit and Terry. Probably not Me Brawler anymore, to be honest, but I think Me Brawler has room to go up. I think he's better than Shulk. Probably not better than Ryu right now, but I do think he should be at the near the top. I do think it's interesting though that like a character who so many people said was top 10 for so long fell off so hard because just some of the characters he really hated fighting became more relevant. Pac-Man just doesn't beat any top tiers besides Diddy. Yeah, that too. He can keep up with some of those lower end top tiers, but I think the most relevant. Actually, no, he does pretty well against Sonic. He doesn't beat Sonic, but he does pretty well against Sonic. But a lot of the very top, like Steve is really hard for him. Snake is not fun for him. Min, I can't believe it can be fun for him either. Joker was never fun for him. Rob's probably not fun for him either. I don't know. I think just the increasage of Steve has made him very hard to show impact in this meta. That's the big one. Min's actually perfectly good. Interesting. Okay. He also does pretty decently against Game Watch too. So it's literally, I think literally it's just the increase of Steve and Snake that makes it so hard for Pac-Man to really function. And then also Cloud existing. Like Cloud's just not fun for him to deal with at all. But yeah, that's A- tier. I think all the characters except for maybe PT and Me Brawler belong here. But right now in the current meta, I think they're here. Every character that's here is fine. Just straight up A tier, we have Corrin, Wario, Sora, Falco, Wolf, and Hero. So Wolf is the worst spacey. Anyone surprised? I'm not. I think this was a long time coming. I do think him being right next to Falco is probably about right. I don't think they're that far off in power level and they could switch off at any moment. But it's a similar, like a character who wants to play neutral in the very punish heavy game. Not to say Wolf can't punish. He has some pretty decent punishes. It's just that he doesn't have the tools to force his own game plan all the time compared to some of the more bullshit above him. So that leads to where he's dropped off a lot harder in the meta. While Falco who might struggle sometimes a bit more neutral, can just cutscene combo a lot of characters and has a lot of different kill confirms and is in that similar boat of I'm part of the problem of the meta in my ability to punish game really well. It's just that he doesn't do it as well as any of the characters really above him, or I should say, the characters who have similar functions above him. Then you have Hero. Hero showing up here is interesting. I'm kind of surprised he's this high. He definitely has proved himself with both Beast Mode Paul and Akagi Kusu really showcasing what the character can do at a top level. Uh, I do think Hero has some not fun matchups that definitely hold him back. I'm not sure if he's going to stay this high if, say, next tier list comes around. I can see him dropping down to A minus. But like Rob is a prevalent enough matchup that I know not Steve, that Hero hates. So that's also like something that's right there that's problematic to begin with. But overall, he's a character who I think is comfortably now a high tier. Really starting to see the potential of his ability to buff himself has ended up being the thing that really showcased, like, but not showcased, but really pushed him above where people's initial perception of him was. Like Accelerado and I can't remember the names of the moves, but the ones that like give him big damage buffs, I think those make him the character. And Bounce. Bounce lets him do a lot better against some of these more projectile heavy characters. Oomph and Psych Up, thank you. Yeah, Oomph and Psych Up and Accelerado and Bounce, I think, are the four that really make this character more than anything else succeed in the current meta. But yeah, good damage, great kill power, it's great X factor with his moves. It was really funny. I think he did like I think it was like a crackle slash. I think it was like Beast Mode Ball we saw do a crackle slash into like a whack to kill someone, which is really funny. Overall, I think he belongs here, but I think he'd go down. Sora being here is interesting because I feel like Sora hasn't existed this past year because of Kameme not really competing anymore, and it's really just been kind of up to Rakior and I think really Deathspade is the only other player that's done stuff with Sora to the capacity. But like Sora still being up here is pure like I believe in the potential of this character and its punish game and what he can do. And I don't disagree that Sora has that ability. I'm surprised he's still regarded this well, especially considering I feel like there hasn't been a solo Sora that's done a lot. Rakior, as good, just as I was about to say, yeah, Rakior co-mains Sora and Cloud. Kameme's always played Sheik. I think he plays Sheik more now whenever he enters tournaments too. So his perception is interesting to me that this feels like the character who's highest based on pure what we see in potential and what we've seen in the past more than current representation of what actually exists in results. Do I think he should be this high up? I have a high perception of Sora. I don't have much issues him being this high up. Maybe he can be lower end of the tier or the tier below, but like I do think he is a good high tier character. I think it is a similar like his player base needs to catch up with his potential. Maybe we'll see a Sora do it this year. That'd be pretty cool. I'd like to see a Sora player finally put the character on the map now that Kameme is kind of out of commission. So we'll see. Wario, I think, is perfectly where he belongs. Solid high tier character, can do things, but has struggle matchups. Gluto's just different. Not much to say. And then, of course, Corrin's rise up to this point of the tier list. I think this is also pretty accurate for Corrin. She's not like super dominant, strong. Shaq and Neo have really showcased what this character can do. She's just a good high tier. She can win majors. She has some trouble matchups, but she can get over them. She's not super crazy in what she can execute. She actually is pretty simple in that regard, but that simplicity still carried her a long way because her simplicity isn't just being able to do well in neutral. Oh, and Daigoro too. Thank you. Is not just her simplicity in what she can do neutral, but she also has a really great punch game and ability to kill. So like, yeah, she's overall good. Overall, honestly, great, but just not exceptional. She doesn't have that insane X factor. I feel like she could just do things really well. And sometimes it's just good enough. then finally, we have the top of the high tiers. The characters just outside of top tier. We have Roy, Olimar, Cloud, Luigi, Bayonetta, Samus, Palutena, and Mario. Olimar over Cloud is a huge Japan moment, if I have to say anything. That's funny to me. I don't think Olimar is better than Cloud, but I do think Olimar, I think we're seeing that this character really hasn't fallen that off in regards to what people thought he would after his nerfs in 2019. I guess I have Shuton. There's quite a few Olimars behind him that are making big waves. Like Candle has made top 8 at majors, Uwame has made top 8 at majors, Noi still does decent stuff with Olimar. This character exists outside of just the top player of Shuton, and I think that's a pretty big showing that, yeah, this character's. Oh, and the Buzz too. The Buzz still uses Olimar from time to time, or Alf, whatever. So yeah, Shuton, Olimar is still a pretty good pick in this metagame and can do well against majority of the characters above him. Like I feel like he doesn't have. He apparently has a great matchup against Sonic because he keeps because Shuton has an insane winning record over Ken and now Sonic's. Does decent enough against Steve. Does decent enough against Game and Watch. Does just decent enough against most of the characters above him. He could just do things really well. And you'd think a character who's been top tier or like, well, he was top tier for so long. Now he's been high tier since I think the tier list started. But you think a character who has been around like this for so long would be more figured out. And it's just interesting watching Shuton play and what he executes with this character and seeing that like Olimar, it doesn't feel that different to what I've seen Shuton do back in 2019, 2020, but still effectively works, if that makes sense. Or like it's just better execution of it, but the game plan still feels like it hasn't evolved that heavily. It's just that good of a game plan that it could still exist in the meta, if that makes sense. Roy's interesting. I personally think Cloud's a better character than Roy. But I do think Cloud and Roy are like the top of the A tier. I don't really think either are top tiers. I think Roy's a very good high tier character who definitely has struggling with his sometimes inconsistency with his hitboxes or recovery and can just kind of get blown up. And then Cloud to me is like, I feel like Cloud's perception has been kind of warped by Spargo. To me, it's like Cloud is built. Spargo is just different. He's just really good. And he's able to use Cloud's kit really effectively. But I don't think Cloud is as domineering on a lot of character matchups as people think he is. I think as a big example of that is just that like there isn't really another Cloud outside of Spargo that is in that echelon of players. And that's no offense to them. It's just the fact of the matter. Cloud's really good, but you can feel his inconsistency sometimes based on Spargo's performances. And Spargo himself is like, last year he was a pretty damn consistent player, but sometimes he just seems a blip in a radar because sometimes Cloud's just hard to execute on, surprisingly. You think maybe not because of Smash 4 brain, and I fucking hate Cloud because of Smash 4. That shit is not character. Like, I still have trauma from that character. I fucking hate that character. But I also can see Cloud for what he is in this game sometimes, and I don't think he is really the big bad like top tier swordsman that Spargo has painted him as due to his results. He definitely has some shortcomings in terms of like just I feel like he just gets hit by cheese easily, if that makes sense. I don't know why, but he just does. Speaking of cheese, Luigi. It's funny, I actually just finished a video about Luigi for a different channel. I'm supposed to go up soon enough. We'll showcase when it does. But yeah, Luigi is Cheese Lord McGee, and he is good. He's just good. It's weird. This character feels like he shouldn't work sometimes, but he just does. His potential to just kill you at go is scary. His early stock combos are amazing. Cyclone and Nair are just ridiculous combo breakers. He has a kill throw. He has kill confirms up the wazoo. He could just grab you and either get up special or down special through that. He could up tilt you into up special. Just the character, he could also, I've seen fucking up special kill out of shield option, which is if you fuck up your spacing, you might just die. This character has a lot going for him. Now, obviously, he's not top tier because his linear ass recovery is so bad that if you just go off stage, you can and will kill him. And you saw that a lot with Luigi last night at Genesis. You've seen the vid, SCJ. Good. Thank you. I've took some time into that one. I'm happy how it came out too. I'm hoping not a lot of notes from Walford. But yeah, he has a lot of strong options, and it's a big example of what the meta is now. Your ability to just what's the word I'm looking for? Your ability to capitalize on a player's mistakes and just fucking wreck their shit and end their day. And that's just what Luigi can do. Luigi's just I'm not Luigi. Luigi's really good at doing that. But that's what Luigi can do. And like you just can't deny his presence with Raru, Navy, Luigi, Waka, all just doing great things with this character. Like it's not it comes to a point where it's like it's not even just cheese. He just has other good things plus really good cheese, and it makes it his charcuterie board of nonsense. For it's ridiculous. He won't ever be a top tier just due to that one big huge flaw of if I go off stage, I could just die. But it's that similarity of like even with like against zoners, he has abilities to circumvent that. Like if you watch Raru versus Doramiki, you'll see his ability, like he'll stop attacks with Zaire with his plunger. Like the Doramiki's like arm will come through, and then with Zaire, like he just nullifies it. It just drops to the ground. So then like he uses that, his Zaire and like sometimes fireball and stuff, like to position himself better to then just close the gap to get the kill. It's crazy what this character is actually capable of doing. I do think we are seeing a bit of that inconsistency side though at the top level, especially coming with Raru this current season. He's definitely been struggling to find the consistency top eights that he used to. So I feel like the character's starting to get a little more time of counterplay being developed and people figuring out a bit more. But he definitely deserves to be this high up at this point. Speaking of Luigi's, here is Lady Luigi, Bayonetta. Bayonetta, similar vibe of just really good combo game, really good at pressing advantage, has an insane burst option with afterburner kick in the air, getaway options with quarter circle afterburner kick, ability to plank on the ledge, just has kill confirms with up tilt into bear and stuff like that. Just really good. I think this is where she belongs as well. Just a really good high tier character. Just doesn't have as much bullshit as the characters above. Samus is interesting. So Samus is a character who I feel like hasn't been able to keep up as much recently, but is still really good, or like still has really good toolkits and like is kind of one of the de facto zoners of the game with charge shot. She still has some really great mix-ups and potentials with her landings, due to the bomb and her smaller hitbox when she jumps. And then on top of that, like charge shot's just tough to difficult. It's just difficult to use. There's a really good keep away tool. Really strong. She could kill you with her normals really well. Bear can make you explode if you're by the edge. Down smash is deceptively strong. Good character. Once again, just is getting outpaced in bullshit. She doesn't really have like as much cheese, or like not too much cheese. She just can play zoning really well, it feels like. Palutena, finally where it belongs, outside the top 20. Claps, Drake claps. Right, she's outside the top 20. I think she's outside the top 20. I could be mistaken. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Top 20. She's, I think, number 20. Top 20, 21, whatever. She is where she belongs. Still a good character. Just, once again, very outpaced in terms of X Factor. She's really good at playing neutral. She can still rack up damage. She does Palutena things. It's just that Palutena things aren't as incredible. That being said, we are kind of seeing a resurgence of Palutena. Like, it feels like Raflo and Louis Money have really pushed this character more, or should I say, has really pushed this character beyond expectations of where she was, and it's nice to see that like this base game top tier still is able to compete really well. It's just that her best players aren't solo Palutena, and I think that's a big thing to showcase that like her character just can't solo do it. Like Louis Money plays Rob, and Reflo plays Samus and Mr. Game Watch as well. But she's still good, and I think she's finally in a spot where I agree with that. Yes, this is where she is in power level compared to the rest of the cast. Oh yeah, and Mario. Mario is always kind of been that interesting spot of like a good character. He has stubby normals, but he can get the job done. He has great combo game. Snow has really showcased what this character do through his like patient play. Beating Sonics in a timeout was one of the most insane things ever. I feel like this is a great spot for Mario though. Like still does Mario similar to Palutena, does Mario things, does it well, can execute in the meta, just has some shit matchups at the very top and makes it very hard to play solo. It's why the best Mario in the world plays Aegis as well. Like the character just has some troubling matchups. And yeah, and Kurama just came back at Genesis, did well. I wouldn't be surprised if Kurama also, because I know for at the end of last time we saw Kurama, he was playing Mario and like I think Corrin as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if he also has a secondary for some of Mario's weirder, tougher matchups. But yeah, even those weird, tougher matchups, though, we saw Snow overcome. He beat Aquila recently. He beat Mia recently, if I'm not mistaken. So like, character can still do. Yeah, character could still do it. Still a good high tier character. I think top of high tier is where he belongs. These characters are just good. They can win majors. They might need some help or they might need a good bracket path, but characters are good. So that is the high tiers. So let's finally get into the juicy top tiers of this tier list. Starting with S-, we have Diddy Kong, Min Min, Fox, Peach, Joker, Yoshi, and Pikachu. I am surprised Pikachu made it into S with Japan's viewing of the character, but I think Shiny Mark has made a lot of NA believers that the character just got enough votes to finally be up here again. Timeout Pikachu's fucked up. Let's just get that out of the way. Timeout Pikachu is a messed up character. Has a lot of good matchups against the top tiers, and I think the only one that feels really hard is probably like Game & Watch. And even then, we're seeing Shiny Mark really innovate with how the character does in that matchup. I think the big thing that makes Pikachu sometimes a bit of a tough sell is that Pikachu's ability to find the kill is definitely probably the most lackluster compared to everyone else in this tier. I do think Pikachu, though, has the ability to go up as Shiny Mark improves and goes to more events and showcases what this character is capable of. And I think once he becomes more consistent with his offline results as well, because that's a big thing. I feel like we haven't really seen the consistency yet, and that is something that we also saw with Esam back in the day, where that lack of consistent results makes it a bit tough. I think Pikachu's biggest weakness is that he sucks at trading and has a ton of weaker hits, multi-hits. Yep, I agree with that too. Plus stubby as well. Yeah. That being said, like Pikachu, I feel like if going in the direction of Sonic, can even time out better and has better defensive play sometimes than Sonic, and it's why Pikachu can beat Sonic pretty easily. Well, not easily, but like consistently. The ability to like Scrooge and go under the map is fucked up. T-Jolt's just a great projectile. And then if you land a hit, you have potential 0 to death combos. You have potential high damage combos. It's just, I think that final finding the kill can be tough. And that's the only thing sometimes that I feel like truly holds back Pikachu besides like that stubbiness. Is that consistency. Once Shiny Mark finds that consistency in finding kills at like that 90, 100, 110%, then the character will really thrive. But I think Pikachu is where they deserve to be right now. That is not what I can say the same for Yoshi, though. This is some Japan bullshit right here. Do I think Yoshi's good? Yes. We have multiple Yoshis who've made top 50 outside of Yoshidora. We have Ron, we have Fui. The character has proven that they can consistently top 8. They have good matchups against some of the best characters in the game. Yoshi fucking hates swords though. And swords are still pretty prevalent in this meta, despite only one really being in the top tiers. There's also Mark and Mokumoku. True, Mark also just recently made top 8. So that's also like the character is capable. Faro does pretty well too in the States. Character has a lot of reps. It's just that I don't think Yoshi has that like X factor you think of the rest of the characters that are here. He's still really good. His double jump armor can do some can help him out sometimes a disadvantage. He's really strong, lands it's like a truck sometimes, really heavy, so he lives a lot longer. Uh has some tougher kill confirms, but drag down bear can land into like forward smash. High damaging moves, as I think I already said that. I just don't think Yoshi is I personally would put Yoshi probably around where Bayonetta, Samus, Palutena is. Good character. It's just like if you have to deal with disjoints, like what does Yoshi do against Cloud Bear? And like we saw some improvement from Yoshidora last time we faced Margo and like innovation in that, but it's just big swords are such a stonewall for the character that it's hard for me to like see Yoshi as a character, especially considering like we haven't seen Yoshi win a major or like it's only won one major all the way in like it's been 3 years. The character hasn't really been able to do that. And I think that's kind of important in terms of like a character who could stick into this top area, like a character who can win. And I feel like you need a good bracket path, which to me doesn't scream a character who's should be in S tier. Like I feel like there's characters who can stonewall Yoshi hard, and we haven't seen a Yoshi player overcome that yet. I think it's because Yoshi can fight Steve Game Watch Snake better than most. Yeah, like Yoshi has really good matchups against the top tiers. We haven't really seen Yoshi overcome the bad matchups, and that's kind of the big thing to me. Until that happens, until a player can push Yoshi to that limit, like it feels like Yoshidora gets stonewalled by the bad matchups. And I think that until Yoshidora can overcome that, or we see Ron or Fui maybe do that, then maybe I'll be more of a believer of the character. But as of right now, I think Yoshi should be an A+. Joker. Joker at the end of high tier is kind of where he belongs, I think, nowadays. Good character who could still press advantage really hard, has building up good tech. But it's definitely we're at the point where the meta has outgrown the original tyrant of the game back in 2019. Don't know what else really to say, honestly. He's still really good, but it's just all the characters above him, I feel like, are evolving faster or can do things better in terms of what the meta wants. And maybe if we see like Leo incorporate more of the more tech that Jokers have came up with into the game plan, maybe opinion might shift. But I think outside of the top 10 is where he kind of belongs nowadays, which is sad to say. But I don't think there's much disagreement that Joker isn't this big top 10 threat anymore. Or if he is, like, if people think he is, he's probably like towards the very end of a lot of people's list. And then we have Peach. Peach is a really good character. Peach is a character to me that can overcome any matchup. It just turn up item play and her combo game and the amount of damage she does, her survivability. Like, man, if you watch Mutace just live forever, if someone took like Mutace's survivability and Umeki's just fucking crack combos, it would be the most terrifying Peach player in the world. It's a bit of a shame that I know Mute has been struggling a lot with the mental aspect of the game recently, so we haven't seen him compete in a bit, but we are seeing Umeki start to pick up the handle a bit after recently, like just beating Sonics at Genesis, which was crazy. But yeah, this character can just do it, and is definitely capable of winning any major. I don't think they need a good bracket path. I think they could just overcome most matchups. Sure, there's harder matchups, but character's just good. Character is just really good. Float cancels and all that other jazz. Still does Peach things. I think having good item play is just really good way of pushing advantage in this game, and she just can make players explode and just has really good disadvantage. So she's able to avoid that prospect of having to deal with other characters' bullshit sometimes. Mech, you'll be at more events. We'll be at both Grand Slams about it. Yep. Uh, Curious to see how he does. It'd be cool to see him win Grand Slam. Grand Slam is the biggest up for grabs major. I hope he wins. I feel like if there's any player I want to see win, it's Umeki because he's just been around for so long. Fox. Fox rounds out the top 10 at the very bottom. I feel like Fox is low, right? It's not just, is it just me? I feel like Fox should be higher. I feel like Fox is another one of those characters who I just can overcome any matchup. I feel like Steve is the only one nowadays, in my opinion, that feels tough. Fox is way low. Yeah, to me, I'm surprised. I'm surprised Fox wasn't, maybe not in the top 5, but like, I think he should be in the tier above. 7th at least IMO. I agree. I think he's better than Kazuya nowadays. I'm surprised he's in this tier. He should definitely be in the S tier. He's not an S plus, but he should definitely be in the S tier. Honestly, I'd put him above Aegis too. I think he should. I don't think he's top 5, but I think he is number 6. I'm surprised he's here. He's incredible. He's always been incredible this game. I don't have to tell you what Fox does. He's an incredible character. Fast mobility, high damage combos, good kill confirms. He's just good. I don't need to tell you, but he just feels way too low. Min Min at number 9, right? Am I doing this wrong? Yeah, Min Min at number 9. When I first saw Min Min's placement, I thought like, oh, this is some Japan shit. Why is Min Min so high? But the more I think about Min Min, the more I start to think that, yeah, you know what? I think Min Min is a potential top 10 character. Her ability to just make you play her game is ridiculous. Doramiki, the thing is, like, we're seeing different Min Mins and how they succeed. Doramiki plays an incredibly fast, either I die or you die kind of Min Min, and it's super engaging to watch. Honestly, if you Doramiki's Min Min's the only one I really, really like watching. I'm a huge fan of Doramiki nowadays. But then also like the slow defensive chip you out Min Min is also pretty effective of keeping you in advantage. Keeping you in disadvantage of like, I'm just gonna keep you spaced out this entire time. And we saw it pretty effective in NA at the throne with Rimbu kind of just fucking up some NA players who weren't ready for that. This character's good. I don't know if I'd per se say they're, I feel like maybe they're at the very bottom of the top 10. Actually, that's not true. I think where they are, they're pretty. I think 9 is a pretty good spot for Min Min, especially when you see like fucking Doramiki beat Base Mage and like Leo's Meta Knight and just overcoming her worst matchups and showcasing that, yeah, she could do it. Her worst matchups don't mean shit to her. And now that Doramiki has just been so consistent this year, showcasing that this character can just top 2 events consistently, and that's nothing you can do about it. I can see why this character is in top 10. I kind of inclined to agree nowadays. Diddy Kong rounds up the S- tier. Once again, I think Diddy Kong is where he kind of belongs, a character who can overcome his worst matchups. He does have some that are really stupid. I think it's like Duck Hunt, and there's 2 that like Diddy Kong is really, really, I guess Pac-Man, but Duck Hunt's like the stupid one. What's the other one? I'm gonna look at the cast real quick. Is it not just Steve? But we've seen like Diddy Kong succeed against Steve. Like, I feel like Diddy Kong can do it against Steve. It's just a very tough matchup, but it's doable. Snake. Yeah, Snake's also tough. But Snake's, all right. Diddy Kong has quite a few losing matchups. The character is really, really strong. I do think, in my personal opinion, I do think Diddy Kong probably shouldn't. I think he is S tier. He's really good. I don't know if he's top 10. I feel like there's some weird matchups he can't really overcome, or like are just huge stone walls for him. But it's a difference of like, I don't know. Diddy Kong's a weird one to pin because it feels like he can do it, but at the same time, there's just some that feel really, really fucking bad. I don't know if he's top 10. I do think he's in the S tier because we have seen Diddy Kong overcome bad matchups. We've seen Tweak beat T and other tough matchups. He will switch to Sephiroth for like Duck Hunt. I think he did recently also for Rosalina, and then he beat it with Diddy Kong. So like, I don't know why he did that, but we've seen also Tweak beat Hurt. I'm pretty sure before he's done it once before. So like it's definitely matchups that he can do. The character can overcome that stuff. I think it's just a lot of effort. Um, Probably at the very bottom of top 10 if he were to be here. I do think so, like personally would put Peach above him. I think Peach is a very good character, but I do think S minus is where he belongs. Speaking of, let's go into S tier. We have Game & Watch Rob, Pyra, Mithra, and Kazuya. I'm surprised Kazuya is still this highly regarded. Sure, he has some of that bullshit of like his 0 to deaths and high damage and his good survivability because of his weight and rage, but like I feel like perception of him has dropped a lot. Yeah, Kazuya's disadvantage. Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like his disadvantage just isn't good. And I feel like he struggles with characters who make him have to play against their game plan. Like, I don't think he does too well against Steve. Definitely doesn't do well against Sonic. We saw him get fucking. I don't think he does well against Snake either. I do not think highly of his neutral disadvantage. I agree. I don't either. I think maybe there's some stuff with his like his misstep kind of thing that he does because it fucks with his hurt box. But like, I don't agree that he's should be here. If that makes sense. I like he should probably be in the honestly. And I'll also get with this Aegis too. I don't think Aegis is that strong of a pick nowadays either. And all honestly, I would split the S tier up, in my opinion. I would put Game Watch and Rob in the tier above, and I would put Pyramithra and Kazuya in the tier below. I don't think these two should be on, these four are all should be in the same tier. Aegis is a character who we've kind of starting to see just not really exist that much as a solo main. We have seen the exceptional performance by Fire, who did really well, getting top 8 at that one Japanese tournament that's not coming to mind right now. But solo Aegis in general just hasn't really existed. Shuton's been more and more Olimar nowadays. Sparko doesn't really use Aegis that frequently either. And I haven't really seen Sparko's Aegis succeed that often recently either, to be honest. Aegis is the best secondary game pretty easily. Yeah, Aegis is definitely the best secondary. But to me, that I feel like doesn't mean this character should be here. Like, I feel like there's enough matchups where, and it's similar idea of like, Mithra really likes to play neutral, but we're kind of moving away towards characters of neutral, like who have good neutral towards characters who have good punish game. And that doesn't say that Mithra can't punish. Her punish game is similar kind of problem to Sheik, where you do a lot for a little sometimes, and you can just get outscaled to damage very quickly. I'd still say Aegis is an S minus in my opinion. Like, I would personally split that S tier into like Aegis and Kazuya down to S minus. Who's the insane snake that popped up this year? You mean Hurt? Who just won Genesis? Have you I mean, if you're new to or if you haven't been keeping up, Hurt is a snake player from Japan who kind of started popping off last year. He made, I believe, top 5 or top 6 in the rankings in beginning of 2024, sorry. And just as kind of stayed in that top echelon of players, and right now he's kind of looking at the contender of number 1 in the world. He's really good. He has really good grenade control. He's really good. Dub, thanks. Yeah, I haven't been keeping up. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no, Hurt's definitely one of the best players in the world right now. If you haven't been keeping up, there's a lot of new Japanese players who just kind of came out of nowhere. It feels like these past 2 years, and it's a very different game nowadays. Anyway, keep going. Rob, to start top 5, I highly agree. Rob is good. Simple as that. He does Rob things. He succeeds. He can overcome any matchup. And Zamba has made me showcase yesterday that it does not matter who you play against. Rob can do it. So Rob at number 5 is where he belongs. Game Watch rounding out this tier as well as at number 4. You know what? Even before Hurt winning Genesis, when I first saw the tier list when it was being created, I kind of agree that I think Snake is a better character to Game Watch. And it's because I think Snake, like, and I'll get to it when I talked about the top 3, but I think, you know what, fuck it. Let's just get into the top 3 because I think that's kind of important segue of where I'm going with this. The top 3 are all characters where you are forced to play against their game plan. You have to play their game. even when they have to face each other, they have to play each other's games. Um, they are completely solo viable. They can overcome any matchup because of their game plans. Even like Snake can overcome Game Watch. It's tough. Like Snake's like CQC is so good still that like he can overcome the Game Watch matchup without needing to rely on Grenade. At least with Game Watch, he has to fight you and not camp as much as guys above. Exactly. Game Watch can't enforce his game plan on all of the characters as similar to the ones above. And I think that's the big difference of why this is the top three and why I agree with this is the top three. That Steve, Sonic, and Snake all are just characters who can do that. Um, I think Game & Watch and Rob are characters who can overcome those three characters' game plans, and it's why I would say they can probably, if like, why I think they're in a tier, or maybe why I think they should be in the tier of their own and not with Aegis and Kazuya, but because I don't think many other characters are capable of doing so that could overcome any matchup as well as the ones above. Yeah, it's just that's what those characters do, and I don't see this top three changing nowadays. Maybe a hot take. I think there is a world where Snake actually might become number two in the game. Uh, I don't think we're gonna see that world, but I do think Sonic has become a little more figured out more and more over time, and I think Snake's game plan is much more harder. Well, not harder, but like it's much easier to force upon your opponents. While Sonic, we're kind of starting to see characters who've been able to find countermeasures. Like Game Watch and Rob can do pretty well against a character. Like I'm looking through like this list: Game Watch, Rob, Aegis, Diddy Kong, Fox. We just saw Peach beat Sonic recently. Pikachu's a very tough character for Sonic to deal with. Roy has been finding success over Sonic. Like there's characters who are starting to really put Sonic more in his place. So I wouldn't be like, he's still very strong, and I think he'll always be in the top three, but I wouldn't be surprised if Snake overcomes him because Grenades is just such a strong game plan that even if you can overcome it, it's something that like Snake can always rely on no matter what. But yeah, that is the official tier list that just came out. Honestly, now that I've gone through it, there's some wacky things, sure, but I think this is a pretty accurate representation of what's been going on more nowadays. And yeah, I think this is actually a pretty solid list overall. I think the characters who are most likely you're going to see go up, I think Bowser Jr. will probably be in B tier next time around. He's actually really good. Apparently he has no weaknesses. I couldn't tell you. I'm not a professional player, but that is the funniest meme that I've heard about him. And who knows if I agree. We'll see. I think Pokemon Trainer might fall to mid tier. Unfortunately, I love that character, but it's very realistically could happen. And is there any other characters I think could rise and fall? I think those are the two that like I'm paying the biggest attention towards. But yeah, that is it for this coverage of the tier list. We'll see if things change within a year. A lot of time can pass. A lot of characters shift around. We'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing how the meta evolves.